Good evening, I'm your host, Jack Remington of Jack Remington Political Analyst. Today's video is about Joe Biden's pick for the vice president for his presidential ticket to run against Donald Trump in November of this year. Yesterday he announced he's picking Kamala Harris as his vice president nominee. So we're going to talk about Kamala Harris in depth here. This is London. This is my daughter's dog. He's half terrier and half miniature pinscher mix. He's got some nicknames. We call him the Black Prince and Darth Vader. He's got a couple other nicknames, but we like the Black Prince and Darth Vader. That's what he gets called the most. So we're going to go over some nicknames for Kamala Harris while we're on such friendly terms. This time a year ago, I only had two nicknames for Kamala Harris, but now that she's been nominated as the vice president, and oh, by the way, watch this clip here. You'll see some guy that kind of predicted this. Question number 22. My other two videos about Kamala Harris were taken down 2 weeks ago. We all know that she is now a huge favorite to be the quid pro quo Sleepy Joe, Two-Finger Joe Biden's vice presidential pick. Is this helping or putting an entire leg of Joe Biden's body in the coffin earlier than expected? Question number 23. Is there anyone here that thinks that Kamala heals up Harris will reject Biden's vice presidential offer? Question number 24. If anyone answers yes to the previous question and are the female persuasion that likes washed up old married men, I want to play tiddlywinks with you. Number 1, Maya Harrison. That is her first and real name. That's her birth name. Number 2, Kamala Harris, or just plain Kamala. That's her stepchildren's name for her. Number 3, Kamala Jamaican Red Harris, smoking that pot, baby. Number 4, Kamala Hangwoman Harris. You can talk to a lot of incarcerated people in California about that nickname. Number 5, Chlamydia Harris, self-explanatory. Number 6, Spank Me Harris, courtesy of Willie Brown when he was married to his first wife. Kamala Harris was his intern. Number 7, Camel Toe Harris. Number 8, Phony Kamala, courtesy of Donald Trump. Number 9, Side Piece Harris, once again another courtesy of Willie Brown. Number 10, Heels Up Harris. That's my favorite one, Heels Up Harris. So that's what we're going to call her. So I got this article off conservapedia.com, and it's titled, and the bio is Kamala Harris, junior U.S. Senator from California, from January 3rd, 2017 to the present. And the article goes on to say, Kamala Harris is a racist Democrat senator from California who publicly impugned all Jamaicans as pleasure-seeking pot smokers and was openly rebuked by her own father. Harris is 1/4 black Jamaican, 1/4 white descendant of slave owners, and half South Asian and Eastern Indians. She is not ADOS, which is American United States Descendants of Slavery. Harris announced her candidacy for the 2020 presidential election in early 2019. Failing to muster support among African Americans and rapidly losing appeal broadly, Harris withdrew from the presidential race on December 3rd, 2019, before the voting began. Yesterday, on August 11th, 2020, presumptive Democratic nominee Joe Biden announced that Kamala Harris would be his running mate for the November election. Harris's rise came about having a sexual affair with a powerful Democrat 4 decades her senior, earning her that nickname, Spank Me. That was her first nickname. Ethnically, Harris has half as much of African blood as President Obama, who is only half black. Unlike Obama, Harris has no relationship to slave descendants in the United States. Harris has no children, and according to The New Yorker, had no meaningful or long-term heterosexual relationship with men for 20 years after terminating her affair with a man old enough to be her grandfather, who bought her a BMW and promoted her from a low-level clerk to several six-figure income government jobs in the California Democratic political machine. And that person we're talking about is Willie Brown, former Speaker of the House of the state of California. And Willie Brown is a former mayor of San Francisco. Harris's qualifications consisting of checking off multiple intersectional boxes in the Democrat Party's program of identity politics, divisiveness, and demonization of white males. Harris is an articulate spokesperson for the unhinged mob. She is doggedly committed to free goodies and social programs such as free health care for illegal aliens, free daycare, female affirmative action quotas, more single-parent families, and its effect on high juvenile offender rates. To cultivate a get tough image as California Attorney General, Harris imprisoned parents for the truancy of their children, which was widespread, leaving the children without a breadwinner and in state custody subject to sexual abuse by the civil service system employees. Kamala Harris endorses the Green New Deal based on the pseudoscientific claim that global warming and carbon emissions can be reduced by slave reparations, a guaranteed universal basic income, and Medicare for all. Kamala Harris maintains that the United States can afford the cost of estimated at 120% of world GDP. Wow. In 2018, Kamala Harris was the leading fundraiser led by elite party donors to challenge Donald Trump in the 2020 presidential election. Harris is a product of the progressive far-left excrement capital of the United States, the San Francisco political machine of Willie Brown, Nancy Pelosi, Harvey Milk, and Jim Jones. Yes, that's Jim Jones. Harris's refusal to defend Proposition 8 in court led to the legalization of gay marriage in California. She announced her candidacy for president on January 21, 2019, and is aligned with socialist Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, AOC. You can tell by my voice I'm not a big fan of AOC either. Kamala Harris has used vulgar and profane language in public. This was despite her condemning Republican values. Harris blamed racist and sexist Democrats for her failing presidential campaign for a Democratic nomination. When Harris has made contradictory or embarrassing statements that habitually fall back on a claim that she misheard the question, in the third pre-primary debate, Harris appeared drunk, causing donors to flee. An Emerson poll showed Andrew Yang outpolling Harris in her own home state. NBC News started writing her epitaph after her third pre-primary performance debate. Kamala Harris, who called Biden out on his racism, was perfectly fine with Biden's obstruction of justice when Biden successfully got a prosecutor fired through extortion and bribery to thwart an investigation to his son Hunter Biden's money laundering schemes. Harris thinks the entire Colin Kaepernick fiasco was a Russian plot. As her campaign faltered in the polls, yet with still much cash on hand, Harris made desperate appeals to hate and racism, trying to keep it afloat. Kamala Harris began stacking her Washington, D.C. congressional office with former Hillary Clinton campaign veterans almost immediately after making her way to Capitol Hill. In July 2017, Kamala Harris' Senate campaign was renting office space from a small travel agency on Capitol Hill just a few minutes away from the Capitol and congressional offices. Harris's campaign never answered inquiries on why they were renting office space 2,800 miles away from her home state. Wow. Her fundraising, somewhat impressive. Kamala Harris gained the financial backing of Marxist and socialist supporters of Bernie Sanders early as a 2020 Democratic Party hopeful. When she made her announcement in January 2019, she broke Bernie Sanders' 24-hour record for fundraising. She is the recipient of tens of thousands of dollars from the elite Hollywood liberal donors arrested in the college admissions scandal. Imagine that. And this Shomik Dutta campaign, the 1MDB scandal. Okay, this Shomik Dutta served as national finance consultant to President Barack Obama's re-election campaign in 2013 or 2012, and he became the managing director of DuSable Capital Management, founded by Frank R. White Jr., vice chair of Obama's 2012 re-election campaign. DuSable only had one client, One Malaysian Development Berhad, 1MDB, whose global network of conspirators face indictment in the United States for money laundering and what the Justice Department calls the largest single action ever brought by the department's kleptocracy asset recovery initiative. 1MDB was wholly owned by the Malaysian government, Ministry of Finance, and cut a deal on paper to partner with DuSable and a photovoltaic electric power plant. DuSable, through a front group called Urus, sold its 49% share, which it had invested no money in, to 1MDB for $69 million 6 months after the paper agreement was made. Some of the proceeds of the $69 million sale ended up as foreign dark money contributions to Democratic candidates. And I'm sure Kamala Harris got a lot of that money. And Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, and Joe Biden. Overall, 1MDB embezzled $4.5 billion with a B from the impoverished people of Malaysia, and possibly the largest globalist investment scam to date, even surpassing Romanovs in Russia in 1917. In March 2019, a $2,800 plate fundraiser was held by the Malibu Democrat Club in a private residence with Shomik Dutta as a featured guest. The event notice was taken down from a Malibu Democrat Club after inquiries were made to the Harris campaign if Harris was aware of DuSable and Duhada's involvement in the global money laundering scandal. Imagine that. Some endorsements. Kamala Harris campaign proudly announced an endorsement from Democrat Representative Alcee Hastings of Florida, who was the center of a $220,000 taxpayer-funded sexual harassment settlement. The $220,000 sexual harassment settlement was paid in 2014. Roll call obtained documents showing the former staffer said Hastings touched her, made unwanted sexual advances, and threatened her job. Hastings also employed a convicted money launderer, is paying his girlfriend the maximum congressional salary, and is known as one of the top ethics violators in Congress. While on the United States District Court for the Southern District of Florida, Hastings was charged with soliciting a $150,000 bribe from undercover FBI officers. Hastings was acquitted after his alleged conspirator refused to testify despite a promise of immunity, but he was instead successfully impeached by Democrat-controlled Congress. Harris said she is proud to have Hastings' endorsement. Harris is also endorsed by Representative Al Green, Democrat from Texas, impeach Donald Trump, impeach Donald Trump, impeach Donald Trump, who was made Texas co-chairman of her campaign and has also been accused of sexual harassment by a staffer. Harris's husband headlined a fundraiser by the law firm that defended Jeffrey Epstein hours before Harris criticized the firm for defending Epstein. I want to repeat that one. Kamala Harris's husband headlined a fundraiser by the law firm that defended Jeffrey Epstein hours before Harris criticized the firm for defending Epstein. Wow. In this first debate, Kamala Harris confronted former Obama Vice President Joe Biden over his role in repealing sections of the 1964 Civil Rights Act that restored funding to schools refusing to integrate with blacks after the 1954 Brown versus Board of Education desegregation order. The Biden amendment, originally written by segregationist Democrat Senator James Eastland, but with Biden's name on it, with few modifications, restored federal funding for schools that refused to comply with court-ordered desegregation and busing. So we'll go ahead and play that clip for you.
To speak on the issue of race. So, on the issue of race, I couldn't agree more that this is an issue that is still not being talked about truthfully and honestly. There is not a black man I know, be he a relative, a friend, or a coworker, who has not been the subject of some form of profiling or discrimination. Growing up, my sister and I had to deal with the neighbor who told us her parents couldn't play with us because we were black. And I will say also that in this campaign, we've also heard, and I'm going to now direct this at Vice President Biden, I do not believe you are a racist. And I agree with you when you commit yourself to the importance of finding common ground. But I also believe, and it's personal, and I was actually it was hurtful to hear you talk about the reputations of two United States senators who built their reputations and career on the segregation of race in this country. And it was not only that, but you also worked with them to oppose busing. And, you know, there was a little girl in California who was part of the second class to integrate her public schools. And she was bused to school every day. And that little girl was me. So I will tell you that on this subject, it cannot be an intellectual debate among Democrats. We have to take it seriously. We have to act swiftly. As Attorney General of California, I was very proud to put in place a requirement that all my special agents would wear body cameras and keep those cameras on. Senator Harris, thank you.
And the next morning, there were T-shirts bearing the image of the words, quote, "That little girl was me," end quote, with the image of a young pigtailed Harris ready for sale on her website the following morning. Her ex-lover, who's now 85-year-old Willie Brown, wrote an op-ed saying that no Democrat could beat Trump. After wiping the floor with Joe Biden in that debate, Harris's poll numbers were cut in half from 20 down to 12% to 7% in the space of 2 weeks, with only 1% of black Democrats supporting her chosen group to identify with. And this is not from the article. This is my interjection here. I don't have time to get the evidence, but it's also been proven that Kamala Harris has never been bused to any of the white schools in California, where I believe her mother and her father had separated for a brief period of time. They may have gotten divorced, but she was living in Canada. Okay, she was never bust, and she used that as a ploy and got away with it because people associate her with being California. She has spent more than half her life in California, working for San Francisco under Willie Brown, working her way up through various means, and she became the Attorney General of San Francisco. She became Attorney General of the state of California. Now she's the Senator of California. So people were not going to question when Kamala Harris says she was that little girl. So we're going to try to get the records and her school records. Where did she go to school? So my one source has that she went to school in Canada, in Toronto, Canada. So we're going to find out about that, and I'll make a second video. After the selection was announced yesterday, August 11th, Harris issued a public statement completely at odds with her previous attitude towards Joe Biden. Quote, Joe Biden can unify the American people because he's spent his life fighting for us. And as president, he'll build an America that lives up to our ideals, end quote. In response, the Trump re-election campaign dubbed the two, quote, Slow Joe and Phony Kamala, end quote. Racism and bigotry. Harris promoted the racist stereotype that Jamaicans smoke marijuana. Harris compared the men and women serving in immigration and custom enforcement, or ICE, to the Ku Klux Klan, while more than half of all ICE agents are Hispanic. Harris was recently confronted by a Hispanic woman for her racist exploitation of Hispanic women and children for votes. Her father rejects her racial stereotypes. Donald J. Harris, a civil rights activist and the father of Kamala Harris, severely rebuked Kamala after she was asked on a radio broadcast if she had ever smoked marijuana. Kamala invoked a vulgar and racist stereotype of Jamaicans. Quote, look, half my family is from Jamaica. Are you kidding me? End quote. Her father responded, quote, my dear departed grandmothers, as well as my deceased parents, must be turning in their grave right now to see their family's name, reputation, and proud Jamaican identity being connected in any way, jokingly or not, with the fraudulent stereotype of a pot-smoking joy seeker and in the pursuit of identity politics. Speaking for myself and my immediate Jamaican family, we wish to categorically disassociate ourselves from this travesty. End of quote. The Jussie Smollett saga. I'm assuming everybody understands what Jussie Smollett did. He faked a hate crime in 2:30 in the morning, minus 25 below zero in Chicago, a complete 100% Democrat city. And all of a sudden, these two white guys with MAGA hats with noose and duct tape and Kool-Aid and bleach grabbed him and tried to assault him and tried to hang him. And he got on TV and cried, and the lady built him up, and Kamala Harris and Jussie Smollett introduced legislation to make lynching a federal crime. Jussie Smollett allegedly faked his own lynching threat to draw attention to the bill. So, and Kamala Harris, we got her tweet right here, what she tweeted. It was a modern-day lynching. Kamala Harris refused to walk back her claims in the Jussie Smollett case when Smollett was exposed as having paid for and staged a hate crime hoax to spark racial animosity. Harris alleged MAGA supporters had engaged in a modern-day lynching. So I'm going to skip over the parts about Jussie Smollett. We already know about that. If you have any questions about Jussie Smollett, I'll make a separate video about that. I mean, I really got to expose these clowns. So Kamala Harris sponsored an anti-lynching bill in the Senate in late December 2018 to make lynching a new federal crime. The bill had always previously stalled in the Senate because it was seen as an unnecessary political gimmick meant to remind people of historical black oppression in the South. Murdering people with a rope has always been a crime under state law. In the wake of Smollett's fake noose assault in Chicago on January 29th, Harris's anti-lynching bill unanimously passed the Senate on February 14th, 2019. Valentine's Day? Harris finally laid claim to a legislative accomplishment, though no matching bill has passed the House of Representatives. So I have to look into that. Maybe it's not a law. Okay, the war on cops. Kamala Harris claims Michael Brown, who spawned the Obama riots, was murdered by a white police officer, provoking widespread criticism. Even the far-left Washington Post fact-checkers awarded her 4 Pinocchios for lying. The Michael Brown case was in Ferguson, Missouri. The hands up, when there was no hands up, he charged a police officer. He previously shook down this smoke joint, just a convenience store, for some cigarettes and some whatever. Women's rights and sex crimes. Protected a known sexual predator on staff for 14 years. A longtime staffer of Harris resigned after Sacramento Bee inquired about a $400,000 harassment and retaliation settlement resulting from his time working for Harris at the California Department of Justice. Larry Wallace, who served as director of the Division of Law Enforcement under Attorney General Kamala Harris, was accused by his former executive assistant in December of 2016 for gender harassment and other demeaning behavior, including frequently asking her to crawl under his desk to change the paper in his printer. The lawsuit was filed on December 30, 2016, when Harris was still Attorney General, but preparing to be sworn in as California's newly elected Democratic senator. It was settled less than 5 months later, in May 2017, by Xavier Becerra, who was appointed to replace her as Attorney General. Kamala Harris, who has known Wallace for 14 years, then hired him in March 2017 as a senior advisor in her Sacramento U.S. Senate Constituent Services Office. Wallace resigned 6 weeks before Harris announced her candidacy for president. According to the Los Angeles Times, the amount of money paid out to settle sexual harassment claims during Harris's tenure as California Attorney General was nearly 3 times more than previously reported. Total sexual harassment claims between 2011 and 2017 were 1.1 million, including several payments to men who apparently were victims of homosexual harassers at work in the state's highest law enforcement bureau. Bob Filner. Harris drew considerable criticism in 2013 for allowing San Diego Mayor and former Democratic Congressman Bob Filner to plead guilty to charges of false imprisonment and battery against 3 women in exchange for a light sentence. 20 women accused Filner of sexual harassment and misconduct. I didn't misspeak. I said 20. 20 women. Some said he put them in the Filner headlocks. Filner could have faced up to 5 years in prison, but the plea bargain instead gave him 3 months of house arrest, 3 years probation, and partial loss of his mayor pension. The plea deal let him escape registering as a sex offender. Filner was allowed to keep his civil service system pension. Wow. No equal pay ever in her office. Harris has never practiced gender pay equity with either her Senate staff or her presidential campaign. In her Senate office, in both recent 6-month disclosure covering the period of April 1st, 2018 through September 30th, 2018, the median male salary disbursement was $34,999, and the median female salary disbursement was $32,999, leaving women just 94 cents of every dollar paid to men. The gender pay gap for the previous month period was almost 2,000 more, at 6%. The pay gap was even greater during the first full months of Harris' presidential campaign in February. The median female salary was 87 cents to the dollar. Quote, keep your hands off our Medicare, end quote. On August 30th, 2017, Kamala Harris announced that she would co-sponsor Senator Bernie Sanders' Medicare for All, creating a single-payer system. So I'm going to skip over some of that. While campaigning on Harris encountered a senior voter, the older woman asked, quote, are you advocating health care for everyone? Who's going to pay for it? End quote. Harris said, well, we're going to pay for it. The woman responded, no, we're not. Leave our health care system alone. We don't want you to mess with it. And Kamala Harris just ignored the lady. In November 2018, Kamala Harris compared ICE workers, half of which are Hispanic, to the Ku Klux Klan. The suggestion sparked horror and outrage. In July 2019, the Tacoma suicide bomber attack by left-wing extremists occurred on the ICE facility housing hundreds of children. Harris never condemned the violence. Kamala Harris refused to stand, applaud, and sat motionless, shaking her head no during the 2019 State of the Union address when President Trump called upon the Congress to take action to end human trafficking. Harris was a staunch fighter of human trafficking as San Francisco District Attorney. Harris proposed taking away Americans' private health insurance and making them pay for illegal immigrants' health care. As presidential candidate, Kamala Harris flip-flopped and became in favor of legalizing prostitution to appeal to the Democrats' criminal element. The Joe Biden crime bill. Harris openly criticized Joe Biden, who authored the 1994 crime bill. Harris said the bill contributed to the mass incarceration in our country, establishing the federal 3 strikes law and funding the building of more prisons in the states. Harris's brother-in-law, Tony West, along with Joe Biden, helped author the 1994 crime bill that incarcerated 2.5 million blacks, 1/10 of the black male population. In the second debate, Harris was called for joking about her smoking marijuana while having locked up over 1,500 people for the same crime in California. The Washington Free Beacon later issued a correction of its finding that Harris had locked up at least 1,560 people for marijuana-related offenses. According to the California Department of Corrections, the figure now is at least 1,974 were admitted to prison under Harris' marijuana offenses, and the last report just came in today that the number is closer to 2,200. Kamala Harris has 4 convicted murderers, rapists, child molesters, drug dealers, and terrorists to vote while in prison, along with Bernie Sanders and AOC. I'm going to skip this thing about the education. Reparations. Kamala Harris originally opposed slave reparations and in its place offered a tax credit for all families earning under $100,000. But she moved towards the reparations as the Democrat strategy of promoting and emphasizing racial divisiveness in the 2020 election took shape. Harris has not elaborated whether the descendants of people who did not own slaves, such as Native Americans, Republicans, Italians, Poles, Jews, Hispanics, and other ethnic groups that migrated to the United States after the American Civil War, will be granted an exemption for paying reparations, or if Americans such as Barack Obama and herself, who have no ancestry connected to North American slaves, would even qualify for reparations. Harris is noted for her nasty wit and bullying Senate hearings with Chairman Chuck Grassley, Judge Brett Kavanaugh, and Attorney General Bill Barr, and Immigration and Customs Enforcement head. After Representative Tulsi Gabbard eliminated Harris from the top tier of candidates with a series of questions about her record during the second debate, Harris press spokesman claimed it was a Russian plot to end her presidential bid. Let's go ahead and play the Tulsi Gabbard clip.
Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard was Google's most searched candidate in all 50 states last night after the debate. It was a hot night for her. It was a good night for her. It was a big night for her. Much of the talk about her centered around an interaction between her and Senator Kamala Harris. She pressed Harris on her criminal justice record. Take a look.
Senator Harris says she's proud of her record as a prosecutor and that she'll be a prosecutor president, but I'm deeply concerned about this record. There are too many examples to cite, but she put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations and then laughed about it when she was asked if she ever smoked marijuana. She blocked evidence. She blocked evidence that would have freed an innocent man from death row until the courts forced her to do so. She kept people in prison beyond their sentences to use them as cheap labor for the state of California. And she fought to keep cash bail system in place that impacts poor people in the worst kind of way.
As the elected Attorney General of California, I did the work of significantly reforming the criminal justice system of a state of 40 million people, which became a national model for the work that needs to be done. And I am proud of that work. And I am proud of making a decision to not just give fancy speeches or be in a legislative body and give speeches on the floor, but actually doing the work of being in the position to use the power that I had to reform a system that is badly in need of reform. That is why we created initiatives that were about re-entering former offenders and getting them counseling. It is why, and because I know that criminal justice system is so broken, that I am an advocate for what we need to do to not only decriminalize, but legalize marijuana in the United States.
I want to bring Congresswoman Gabbard back in. Your response,
ma'am? The bottom line is, Senator Harris, when you are in a position to make a difference and an impact in these people's lives, you did not. And worse yet, in the case of those who are on death row, innocent people, you actually blocked evidence from being revealed that would have freed them until you were forced to do so. There is no excuse for that. And the people who suffered under your reign as prosecutor, you owe them an apology.
All right, so pair that with what Senator Harris said after she had a little bit more time after the debate. Take a look.
This coming from someone who has been an apologist for an individual, Assad, who has murdered the people of his country like cockroaches. She who has embraced and been an apologist for him in a way that she refuses to call him a war criminal. I can only take what she says in her opinion so seriously.
Statement to take us right into Tulsi Gabbard responding to the accusation that she is an Assad apologist. Watch this.
I think it's unfortunate and a disservice to voters in this country that she resorts to cheap smears rather than actually addressing her record, the issues that I've raised, and the fact that she said she is proud of this record. If that's the case, then voters deserve to hear about why she's so proud of the lives that she has negatively impacted, the families that she's torn apart in California.
Again. So you can talk about how she didn't answer the question, which was the valid mostly 70% of that discussion. The first 25%, you can say, this is where I've stood on a side. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe she doesn't believe that. So that's the first problem.
Right. Has she ever said that she made mistakes?
No.
I don't think so. She didn't there.
No. But then if you're going to say it's a smear, at least say why it's a smear, say why it's inaccurate. Because they both said what each other is saying about them is inaccurate. It can't all be inaccurate.
Right.
Because it's all easily researchable. So you have a couple folks, and Biden included, he did the same thing. You don't want to talk about what someone brought up. You try to shift it. That's the political strategy with this. And people who watch closely like us don't buy it. But the sad thing is, this strategy of deflecting and moving on to other things works for both Kamala, Tulsi, and Joe.
Shortly after, it was reported that the California Attorney General's office removed arrest records during Kamala's tenure, making it difficult to research her claims. Imagine that. So let's talk about her career. Kamala Harris began her career in politics at the age of 29 by having an extramarital affair with a corrupt 60-year-old California politician, Willie Brown. Married politician Willie Brown. As San Francisco mayor, when they were having their affair, Brown was dogged by conflict of interest accusations, and as Speaker of the California Assembly was investigated by the FBI. When the tryst began, she was a low-level clerk in the city office of Mayor Brown's political machine. Mayor Brown gave her a brand new 1994 BMW. As Speaker, Brown appointed her to high-paying jobs on the California Medical Assistance Commission and Unemployment Insurance Appeals Board. These positions paid more than $400,000 over 5 years. During her first bid for electoral office as District Attorney of San Francisco in 2003, which Speaker Brown assisted by raising money and introducing her to deep-pocketed donors, she excused the gift of a brand new BMW away, telling reporters that she traded it for a 1997 BMW, which she then drove. After dumping Harris, having a child with a lobbyist he awarded a multi-million-dollar contract to, and divorcing his wife, 84-year-old Willie Brown took up with a Russian model, Sonia Molokatista. Like Hillary Clinton and Michelle Obama, Harris failed her bar examination. Harris was elected San Francisco District Attorney in 2003. In April 2004, San Francisco Police Department officer Isaac Espinoza was shot and killed in the line of duty. 3 days later, Harris announced she would not seek the death penalty, infuriating the San Francisco Police Officers Association. During Officer Espinoza's funeral, Senator Dianne Feinstein rose to the pulpit and called on Harris, who was sitting in the front pew, to secure the death penalty, prompting a standing ovation from the 2,000 uniformed police officers in attendance. Harris still refused. Officer Espinoza Killers was convicted of the murder and sentenced to life in prison. Harris refused to seek the death penalty for an illegal alien and alleged MS-13 gang member accused of a triple homicide. In 2012, a Superior Court judge ruled that San Francisco District Attorney Harris's office violated defendants' rights by hiding damaging information about a police crime lab technician and was indifferent to demands that it account for its failings. In 2008, the people of California passed Proposition 8, the state's referendum on same-sex marriage, by an overwhelmingly popular vote. Harris refused to defend the Proposition 8 in court. The decision was significant. In 2013, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that the proponents of the measure did not have the legal standing to defend Proposition 8 on appeal after Harris refused to do so. The case was dismissed by the U.S. Supreme Court, removing the ban on same-sex marriage in California. These actions were a blow to direct democracy. Think about that. The people voted twice on that in California, and it got overturned twice by some judges. Think about that. Why vote on the proposition if they're going to overturn it? Because they didn't get the results that they liked. Sound familiar? Kamala Harris refused to investigate a police sex trafficking ring. An underage sex trafficking scandal implicated dozens of police officers and other local authorities throughout the San Francisco Bay Area. Oakland, California, Oakland went through 2 police chiefs trying to address it, with a third doing so only questionably better. People were pleading for Harris' office to step in and oversee an independent investigation, since local governments seemed more motivated to squash a public relations nightmare than punish public officials. Harris and her office refused to intervene. Prosecutorial misconduct. In 2015, Harris defended convictions obtained by county prosecutors who had inserted a false confession into an interrogation transcript, committed perjury, and withheld evidence. Federal appeals court threw out the convictions, telling Harris's lawyers, quote, "Talk to the Attorney General and make sure she understands the gravity of the situation," end of quote. Wow. In the Senate, Harris has earned a reputation for rudeness and bullying. Harris has earned an F rating from the National Rifle Association, so much for the Second Amendment. Harris opposed the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017, which has spawned the current recovery, and has proposed her own set of alternative socialist tax increases. Gee. Staff members for Senator Harris submitted an undated handwritten letter to committee investigators that her California office had received, signed under the alias, quote, Jane Doe from Oceanside, California, end quote. 3 days before Kavanaugh's confirmation vote, Judy Monroe Layton wrote an email to the committee claiming, quote, I am Jane Doe from Oceanside, California. Kavanaugh raped me, end quote. Under questioning, Monroe Layton admitted she was a left-wing activist who never met Brett Kavanaugh. After Kavanaugh's confirmation, the Senate Judiciary Committee referred her to the Department of Justice and FBI for a criminal prosecution because she lied to Congress. While contemplating a run for presidency, Kamala Harris married Doug Emhoff in 2014, a Los Angeles-based managing partner of a law firm. According to The New Yorker, between her breakup with Willie Brown in the mid-1990s and her first marriage at the age of 50, she had no long-term heterosexual relationships with men. Another July 2019 New Yorker profile portrays Willie Brown as a major influence on Harris, while her husband is portrayed as a political prop and nuisance. The author quotes a longtime donor to Harris who suggested she would have stayed single if it wasn't for her presidential ambitions, saying, quote, when she married Doug, I knew she was running for president, end quote. She just cannot admit that she makes a mistake. She cannot admit anything, or she just can't say, I've changed my position, or I've done some further research and this is my new findings. She can't find a graceful way or even logical or sensible way. She paints herself in a corner, and she can't figure out how to get out of the corners. She just blusters, butchers, which is leading up to one of my videos in the future. The one thing about this Joe Biden pick of picking Kamala Harris was that at least he didn't, he picked the third worst one. He could have picked this one or even this one. In a way, Joe Biden saved us some grief because these two would not have been good for our country. I don't need to explain that, do I? But what's concerning me about this pick is that this vice president, if Joe Biden were to win the election, which he could still win the election, but people hate Trump so bad, she's going to be running the country, because look what happened when George W. Bush won in 2000. He let Dick Cheney run the country, and that's within his right to do so. Dick Cheney actually did a good job, and he was an experienced politician. He was very smart. Yeah, he had his cronies from Halliburton and the oil services industry helping him, but so what? That's what cronyism is all about. That's how America was really created. It's a dog-eat-dog world out there, and you line up with your best friends on one end, and you put them against your best enemies, and then you just got to make sure you win. And Dick Cheney actually did a good job, and he was actually more politically competent than George W. Bush. I'm pointing out a potential flaw in the system that you're voting for a president, and that's who's the main driver of the ticket. But in this case, the running mate is going to be running the country, and people knew that with George W. Bush in 2000, and I want you to be aware this was going to happen if Joe Biden were to win in 2020. Now, if Donald Trump gets reelected, well, we know he's going to run the country. Mike Pence is perfect. To me, is the perfect vice president. You don't see him unless he's called upon. I mean, he knows his job, and Mike Pence is one of the best picks Donald Trump ever made. I think Mike Pompeo is a good pick too. Kamala heals up Harris is a vice presidential pick. Now, in one of my earlier videos, the initial pick chosen by the DNC was going to be Amy Klobuchar, because Joe Biden likes prosecutors. That didn't work out because she's white. So I already got another video about that if you want to do some research. And I still think that Amy Klobuchar was the best of the remaining bunch, because Joe Biden paints himself in the corner by saying, I must pick a woman. So the genitalia is important. That's part of identity politics. So, no man can do a good job. He can only have a woman. So men say that, well, I need to hire a man for this job. Women get mad. But that's a different dynamic for a different video. And my wife's in the next room, and she really doesn't like it when I discuss the dramatic difference between men and women. So there you have it. Hope you enjoyed the video. I got to do a lot of cutting on this one. I want to make this one a good one. And it's always a great day to be an American. Trump 2020. Thank you. Stay tuned for the next video.